This is a short video on feeding and maintaining your sourdough starter. If you've got a sourdough starter from us at Tracebridge, they'll be coming in these little pots like this. At home you might have been given it from a friend, a baker. It might be sat at the back of your fridge at the moment. As long as it's not got any red mould on it, it's good to go and we can bring it back to life. Even if it's got that layer of kind of hooch, which is just alcohol, brown layer on the top of liquid, that's still good to go. So dig it out of the fridge and let's feed it up. First of all, I wanted to talk to you about what containers to keep it in, because I get asked that quite a lot. It doesn't really matter, okay? I tend to prefer clear because it means you can see the sourdough starter through it, and you can see it like rising to its peak and then dropping down again and seeing the air in it, the all important gas bubbles. However, it really doesn't matter. The shallower it is, it kind of holds its heat a little bit better. Sometimes I'll be keeping mine in like ice cream tubs, and if it's a really thin layer on the bottom, it's going to cool down a lot quicker. So ideally, a Kilner jar like this, I've just taken off the rubber seal, but you don't really have to. I just like it to have a little bit of air breathing in and out. That's fine. And a yogurt tub, okay? Another good thing about the yogurt tub is you can attach an elastic band round once you've fed it. That way you know when it's rising and it's falling, and when it's going to reach its peak. So feeding, okay? Feeding is just giving your sourdough starter the wild yeast food. The yeast needs sugar. It consumes the sugar and produces the carbon dioxide, and that's what helps your bread rise. So I think it's really simple just to keep it with equal amounts of flour and water. There's lots of information out there on different flours, different feeding schedules, different amounts of water. But as you're beginning and just learning, just start with the same amount of flour and water. And it's easier to understand your sourdough starter if you're using a strong white bread flour. So I'm going to be using Shipton Mill strong white bread flour today to feed ours. So really simple when you're feeding your sourdough starter, okay? You take 10-20 grams, so that's roughly a dessert spoon. And we're going to feed it 50 grams of water and 50 grams of flour. Now the main thing to understand with sourdough and sourdough starters is it's completely dependent on temperature. So as you can imagine, in the summer everything's very warm, your flour will be warmer because it's sat in your room, your sourdough starter will be the similar temperature because that's sat in your room, whereas in winter everything's a lot colder. That being said, okay, in winter a lot of people have central heating, so you might find that your kitchen could be warmer in winter than in the summer. So this is completely variable, and the only way that you can control how your sourdough starter is working is by the water temperature. Okay, if you make the water temperature cooler, it will bring everything down. If you make the water temperature warmer, it will bring everything up. It's a fine balance with understanding the water temperature. What I tend to tell people in my classes is in winter, don't go any higher than blood temperature. Okay, so it's about 37 degrees. In summer, you can be going down to 20, 25. And if it's really warm, you might even want to be going down to tap cold. Now, at the beginning, you're going to have an understanding of how much you're going to have to raise the temperature or lower the temperature, because it will be how quickly your sourdough starter is moving. If you're finding it's very sluggish and it's fermenting very slowly, you're not getting a lot of bubbles in it, it's taking over 24 hours to get to the point you want it to, start using warmer water. If you're finding that it's rising and falling within 6 to 12 hours and you only want to be doing one feed a day, then you need to be dropping down to cooler temperatures. Okay, so let's feed it up. So I'm going to go with 50 grams of flour. And 50 grams of water. Now, it's quite cold here today, and it's not been overly warm in the bakery, so I've decided to go for kind of blood temperature water. And you can see that, yeah, that's about 37. I presume that most of you aren't going to have thermometers at home, so just get a real feel for that. You should be able to feel it, and every day understand how your water is affecting the sourdough. Okay, 50 grams of water. And then give it a really good mix. Okay, do have some people in my classes that think it's going to mix itself, but it's not, so give that a really good mix. And it'll almost be a bit like wallpaper paste. That's the kind of the consistency. You just want to make sure there's no dry bits. And use a spoon, wooden spoon, spatula, your hand, you know, anything that's giving it a really nice mix. I favour a spatula just because it helps me clean off the sides of my tub. And that's one feed, okay? So you can't really see any air bubbles there at the moment, just on the side from where I've mixed. Now this will sit 12 to 24 hours. I fed it quite warm. I tend to do 2 feeds a day. If you don't want to be doing that and be a slave to your sourdough, then cut that down and just do 1 in the evening or 1 in the morning and use a lot cooler water. Okay, like I said, mark it with an elastic band, you know, here, or mark it with a pen, and then you can see it will rise, and then mark where you think the peak is, and that will start to give you an idea of when to take your sourdough starter and how to use it. Taste it, smell it, and when you come to bake, the main thing to remember is float it in water. But we'll talk about more about when your starter is ready another time.